When Perfect Order and Rotation come to Pokemon TCG Live on March 26, it will mark a new era for the game. All 1,000 cards with a G legality marker in the bottom left will leave standard forever, taking things like Nestball, Artisan, Io, Arven, Pidgeot, Charizard, Golden Professor's Research, and so much more. The good news is that we're getting 8 brand new free decks on the same day, all of which are prepped for the entirety of 2026. These 8 decks will continue to be available until March 2027, when the next round of rotation takes every card with an H in the bottom left, including Dragapult, Dusknoir, and Budew. Before I get to the free decks ranking and upgrades, this is every single staple card you get for free for simply booting up live. Yeah, there's a lot. 163 to be exact. What you'll notice as I show off the list is that a Meowth and Fezandipiti, the 2 best support Pokemon in 2026, are included in all of them, as are pretty much the same supporters and items. You'll also find a different A-Spec in each deck, which is amazing, giving you free access to some of the most powerful cards in the game. For those unaware, you can only have 1 A-Spec in your deck, and every deck should have 1 A-Spec. I know this image is a little overwhelming, but that's a good thing. It means you won't have to spend many trade credits to build your decks in TCG Live, if any at all. Naturally, Dragapult is the best free deck. It's also the best overall deck in the entirety of the Pokemon trading card game right now, able to beat off anyone thanks to its power and consistency. Looking at the free list, it has everything you need. A 4-4-3 Dragapult line, a 2-2-2 Dusknoir line, and 1 each of Meowth and Fezandipiti is perfect. They do go a little overboard on the rare candy, but if you play this in a limitless tournament, at least one of your opponents will call you a brain-dead cuck in the chat for not coming up with something unique. In terms of how to play this Dragapult deck, it's easy. Turn 1, try to get as many Dreepy down as possible using Buddy Puffin and Pokepad. This is important because it means next turn you can evolve into Drakloak, who draws cards every single turn. To help with your setup, there's Meowth. Use Ultra Ball, get Meowth EX, then use its ability to find something like Lillie's Determination, who shuffle draws 8 cards at the start of a game. And if your opponent is able to knock anyone out, Fezandipiti helps draw you 3 cards, making both integral to your strategy. As for Dusknoir, this one's a little tricky. Both Dusknoir and Dusclops knock themselves out, giving your opponent a prize. It's worth it though, because they place either 13 or 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, helping you set up KOs. Unfortunately, Psyduck exists. A lot of decks play this card specifically to counter Dusknoir, as it completely shuts off its ability. When that happens, your goal is to try and get rid of Psyduck. Dragapult's Phantom Dive attack puts 6 damage counters on their bench Pokemon however you want, except Psyduck has 70 hit points, so it could present quite a few problems. Speaking of problems, getting Dragapult powered up. To that end, Neo Upper Energy is the A-Spec here. Attach it to Dragapult, you can launch Phantom Dive right away. And Hilda can find both Dragapult and Neo Upper. But if you prize Neo Upper or it gets discarded from play, you have to rely on Crispin. This allows you to fully power up a Dragapult, though it is your supporter for turn, which is why Drakloak drawing cards is so important. For each of the 8 decks, I'll talk about the upgrades you can make for as cheap as possible, utilizing the 163 staple cards everyone gets. In cases like Dragapult, where you have to spend some credits, it'll be so minor, Terradon will want to hire it. For Dragapult specifically, you want 2 Budew. This is the attacker you use turn 1 and maybe even turn 2 while you set up a Dragapult. For 0 energy, Budew does 10 damage and prevents them from using items. It's been a menace since the day it came out and will continue to be for another year. You make room for Budew by cutting 1 each of Dusclops and Dusknoir. Because the memo's out about how good Dragapult is, most people are running Psyduck, so putting all your Execute in that basket isn't a good idea. Instead, include 1 Munkidori and 1 Darkness Energy. The Monkey helps you spread more damage and can be powered up with Crispin. Because Crispin and Rose's Encouragement become more of a focus to accelerate energy, you can ditch Neo Upper for Unfair Stamp. Simply being able to stick your opponent to 2 cards can win you the game in certain situations, making it a must. When all's said and done, this is what your upgraded Dragapult list will look like. Between 2 Budew and 1 Roses, it'll cost 180 trade credits to craft. You can find that in your couch cushions. I do highly recommend swapping the 1 copy of Switch for a Latias EX though, which will require 600 credits. But aside from that, this is what's dominating tournaments right now. Even though they kind of butchered the list in some places, I'll put Mega Lucario EX in 2nd place since it is the 2nd best deck of 2026. While there are some things you can immediately remove like Salvatore and Hilda and Okidogi, Lucario is an extremely fast deck that hits everything super hard. While it is a Mega Lucario deck, Lunatone and Zoroark are very important here. With both in play, Lunatone can discard a basic fighting energy from hand to draw 3. Zoroark, meanwhile, can deal 70 damage for a single fighting. This allows you to KO weak things early while you build up to a Lucario later. Ironically, the Lucario deck includes Meowth and Fezandipiti, which are part of the reason why it's so strong. For a single energy, Aura Jab does 130 damage. Both Meowth and Fez are weak to fighting, meaning you one-shot them. And where other decks have to rely solely on boss's orders to gust someone up on the bench, simply evolving into Hariyama does that for you here. While 130 damage is fine in those situations, you will need to launch Mega Brave for higher HP threats. Between Maximum Belt, 4 copies of Premium Power Pro, and Gravity Mountain, that shouldn't be a problem. So not only is Lucario able to take knockouts for 1 energy, accelerating energy in the process, it doesn't care if you're a Mega Venusaur with 380 hit points. The upgrades to Lucario are more or less removing the unnecessary things they added. Ditch the Okie Dokie and a couple supporters, add a third Zoroark for 100 credits and a few trainers you already own. Then take this to a tournament and feast on anyone who has to use Meowth or Fezandipiti to play the game. For a number of factors, including the fact that it's a beefy Toad who hits the Pedo and Zoroark for weakness, Mega Venusaur gets the 3rd spot. I think part of the reason why they made a few silly decisions building these lists is that they wanted to spread the various stadiums and trainers around as much as possible. In the case of Venusaur, Grand Tree is the A-spec, which makes very little sense. Aside from that though, the deck is almost perfect. There's several cards grass decks have access to for consistency, and they're all here. Ogerpon is not only a great attacker, it accelerates an energy onto itself each turn while also drawing a card. Bug Catching Set can find grass Pokemon and energy, while Forest of Vitality allows you to evolve your grass types immediately so long as it isn't your first turn. Evolving quickly is important because Meganium doubles all basic grass energy attached to your Pokemon. This is important for Venusaur, who now only needs 2 energy to attack, not 4. While Venusaur's dumps deal a disappointing 240 damage, missing knockouts on everything meaningful that isn't a basic, the 380 hit points makes up for it. Venusaur is almost always going to survive a hit, opening up a fun combo. Wally's Compassion is a supporter that fully heals a Mega at the cost of returning all energy to your hand. So you can either solar transfer the energy elsewhere, heal with Wally, then transfer it back. Or you can use Wally while Venusaur has energy attached, then re-accelerate them with Ogerpon, drawing even more cards. As I alluded to, I don't know what Grand Tree is doing in this list. All it does is help out your opponent, gaining you next to nothing in the process other than the ability to read. And we as Pokemon card players know that's a useless skill. Unfortunately, you want to replace Grand Tree with Max Rod, one of the A-specs not given for free to everybody. It's absolutely worth the 600 trade credits though, retrieving any 5 in combination of Pokemon and basic energy from the discard pile. Add Max Rod, mess with the counts of a few trainers, and this is the Venusaur deck you'll end up with, all for 600 credits. Just don't be afraid to add a second Meowth and second Wallies once you're comfortable with Venusaur for maximum healing shenanigans. Then in 4th place we have Zoroark EX. A grass weakness isn't great, but what we've learned from spying on Japanese people when they think no one's looking is that card draw and cheap attacks are paramount in 2026. Zoroark has both of those things. Just don't ask me why they included Redeemable Ticket in the list instead of a second Zekrom. Anyway, Zoroark's whole thing is that it can copy the attack of any ENS Pokemon on your bench. There's only 3 you need to worry about in Darmanitan, Zekrom, and Reshiram. Darmanitan does force you to discard all energy, but being able to deal 90 damage to their active and 90 to the bench could potentially give you 2 prizes. Zekrom is the best one to copy as it does an easy 250 at the cost of not attacking next turn. If you watched my 10 mistakes new players make video, you'll know that switching or retreating will allow you to attack with that same Zoroark again. Finally, Reshiram. This one's only useful when Zoroark takes a big hit and survives, as Powerful Rage does 20 damage times the number of damage counters on Zoroark. Along with the Pokemon, Zoroark has several good trainers. By DMing him feet picks, you get ENS PP up, which accelerates an energy from the discard pile. So don't be afraid to use Darmanitan's attack or discard Darkness Energy with Zoroark's ability, which gets rid of 1 card from hand to draw 2. Hatcherunt, meanwhile, allows you to switch into a bench Dart type at the cost of getting poisoned. This is actually a good thing because it means Binding Mochi activates, boosting damage dealt by 40. To improve the deck, immediately ditch Redeemable Ticket for a second Zekrom at 400 credits. Power Glass and Energy Recycler are also unnecessary. Between the 8 energy in the deck and 4 ENS PP up, you'll never run out unless you use Darmanitan's attack every single turn. As you can see from the upgraded list, I added Budew for something to do on turn 1 and Munkidori to help with math. For a further upgrade, you could swap the 4th ENS PP for a Black Belt's Training, which boosts the damage you deal to EXs by 40. It's not 100% necessary, but it does allow you to one-shot a Dragapult without needing Munkidori. I'll admit there's a Gulf of America between the top 4 decks and the bottom 4 decks. Like our Chaladon though, Steven's Metagross is a good bridge between the 2 sides. What I will say is that where Dragapult requires a lot of math, Metagross is just an overall high-skill deck. So I don't recommend trying this out until you're comfortable with the game. Instead, start with Lucario, which is by far the easiest one for new players to use. What makes this deck so difficult to learn is how many moving parts it has. The core strategy though is to get Steven's Metagross up and running. When you do, it can accelerate a Psychic and Metal energy from deck to any of your Psychic or Metal types however you want. They decided to pair it with Jellicent TX. But there's also Mega Starmie and Mega Mawile, two cards nubile virgins such as yourself probably won't use properly at first. Starmie snipes 220 damage anywhere on the field, which is great for KOing Meowth or Fezandipiti, but it does give up 3 prizes when it's knocked out since it's a Mega. Mawile, meanwhile, is really only good at the end of a game. Gobble Down does 80 damage for each prize card you have taken, which means it can deal 320 or 40 damage after you've taken 4 or 5 prizes. So while both are good, they're very situational. For the Jellyfish, if it's in the active, your opponent can't play any items or tools from hand. This can be absolutely game-breaking. While Jellicent's damage is quite low, dealing either 80 or 160 based on how many energy it has, that's perfect for buying you time to set up. If everything's going right, you're attacking with Frillish turn 1, shotting off their items. Turn 2, you evolve into Jellicent, dealing 80 damage. All the while, Genesect is helping you get Metagross into play as it grabs 2 Metal evolutions from deck each turn. It's not the most outwardly powerful free deck, but it is serviceable, especially if you want to be annoying. When it comes to upgrades, Steven's Metagross is panged winning more games with Empoleon than Jellicent. That upgrade path will cost you north of 1200 credits. Keeping it with just the Jellicent version, all you really need is Lillie's Clefairy. This allows you to one-shot Dragapult through weakness for minimal effort. Because you already have Genesect to find evolutions, I got rid of Dawn. And since you need to have a good turn 1, Precious Trolley replaces Unfair Stamp as the ace spec, loading up the bench with basics. To that end, I messed with the counts of a few cards to fit in 3 Pokegear, which searches the top 7 cards of your deck and lets you pick any supporter, including Petrol, who can find your trolley. See, it's all coming together. For this version, you'll need to set aside 900 credits if I did the math right. But you definitely want a second Genesect for 600 more credits, bringing the total to 1500, which kinda makes it not worth it in my opinion. In 6th is Mega Sharpedo. To be fair, none of the free decks are inherently bad. There's just varying degrees of good. If you face a grass deck, the Pedo sucks. Against everybody else, well, you have to get a great start. And this is probably the worst list out of the 8 given for free, requiring the most changes. Before I get to that, we have our first and only appearance of Munkidori in the free decks. At least until Patrat in May, you'll be seeing this card a lot. Attach a Darkness energy to the monkey, it can move 3 damage counters from your side of the field to theirs. So if they don't do enough to KO Sharpedo, they're actually helping you out. If you can't masterfully bait them into letting you spank your monkey though, that's where Toxtricity comes in. It accelerates a Darkness energy from deck to a Darkness Pokemon on your bench at the cost of putting 2 damage counters on it. Unfortunately, Sharpedo doesn't deal more than 270 damage on its own, and it has to be damaged to reach that number. So you have to leave at least 1 counter on the shark to maximize its potential. In order to boost its damage further, you use the same Petra and Binding Mochi combo as Zoroark, which sadly still isn't enough to KO a Lucario, whereas they can KO you. At the very least, you do have access to Seviper, who hits for 240 damage, provided you have a Sharpedo in play. I appreciate the Pokemon Company trying something different here, but under no circumstances should the Pedo be near a school. Even if the combo of flashing a Dark type into play works with Grimsley's move, it's not even that powerful here. The much better stadium is Gravity Mountain, lowering the HP of Stage 2s. And because this deck is lacking in draw, go with Unfair Stamp over Legacy Energy as the ace spec. Speaking of draw, Totsugiri is great to put in the active to disappoint you, with its ability being a Pokegear. With the 2 Totsugiri, this upgraded Sharpedo list costs just 200 credits. Yeah, while we do have to deal with game-breaking bugs regularly, the fact that Live is completely free and constantly gives you free stuff almost makes up for the mental anguish. There's one reason why Mega Manectric is in 7th, and that's Lucario. A fighting weakness in a world where a fighting deck can deal massive amounts of damage for 1 energy is no bueno. Aside from that horrific matchup, Manectric's actually a good card with some versatility. Its first attack prevents basic Pokemon from damaging it, meaning you basically auto-win against something like Raging Bolt or Lillie's Clefairy. And its second attack can deal either 200 or 330 damage, though that extra 130 comes at the cost of discarding all energy. Unfortunately, if you're as much of a math whiz as I am, you've noticed that 330 isn't enough to KO Lucario. So they can one-shot you for 1 energy while you're unable to return the favor with 3. To help power up Manectric, there's Electric. It can accelerate a lightning energy from the discard pile to any one of your bench Pokemon. That can be Manectric or 2 of its other good attackers, Zeraora and Zekrom EX. Zeraora snipes 210 damage to a bench DX, which is perfect for one-shotting a Meowth or Fezandipiti. And Zekrom is awesome at the end of a game, dealing 330 or 380 damage if your opponent has taken 4 or 5 prizes. There isn't a whole lot to upgrade here. If Lucario didn't exist, this would be a top deck in 2026. The Dragapult matchup isn't horrific, and swapping Secret Box for Maximum Belt allows you to deal with somebody like Mega Venusaur. I also didn't talk about Canary, which you want 2 copies of. Discard any card from hand, go get any 4 lightning types. It's great consistency, but might feel too weak at times. That's why I also suggest Tapu Koko. For a single lightning, its attack is Carmine, discarding your hand and drawing 5. Best of all, it works on the first turn of the game. For a mere 500 trade credits, this is the Mega Manectric deck you should be running in 2026. Aside from swapping out Gravity Mountain for Battle Cage as a way to try and protect the bench, it's pretty straightforward. But if your opponent flips over a Riolu, just concede. It's not worth the Psyduck-sized headache. Question me all you want, Mega Charizard is the worst free deck we're getting. Don't get me wrong, it's still good when it works and can deal the most damage out of any deck in this video. But I can't lie to you and say it'll win regularly. For 2 fire, Inferno X does 90 damage times the number of fire energy discarded from your Pokemon in play. Get rid of 4, that's 360, one-shotting pretty much everything in the game. To get that energy, you run Fire Breather, who grabs 7 from deck. And Oricorio EX can accelerate them all to the bench, provided you have a Megazard in play. So what's the problem? For starters, Oricorio can't accelerate to the active. This means you have to have a Charmander or someone with an air balloon up front. On top of that, there's very little consistency. Where Dragapult has Drakloak and Lucario has Lunatone and Zoroark plays with itself, Charizard is reliant on Meowth, Fezandipiti, and its low count of supporters to get through the game. They also went with Trolley as the ace spec, essentially forcing you to Ultra Ball for Meowth turn 1, grab Petrol, then Trolley for all your basics. Except if you prize Trolley, you're in trouble. And even if everything does go according to plan, they can just target your Oricorio, shutting off your ability to accelerate fire energy into play. Again though, Charizard can deal 900 damage if you want, which can't be ignored. It's just that getting there might be a long journey. I looked at the few Megazard decks to do anything in Japan these past couple of months, and funnily enough, Zoroark was the most common partner. It helps solve the lack of card draw which the deck sorely needs. Or you can run to Dunsparce to fill the same role, except it'll cost 1200 credits to get 3 copies. Which isn't a bad thing, especially for anyone wanting to dominate with Alakazam. If you want to keep the core the same though, just add a Volbeat and call it a day. That being said, in the comments, because YouTube has a character limit for the description, you'll find this Mega Charizard Zoroark list. Is it actually good? Probably not. But it only costs 40 credits to craft thanks to the one Budew. For a possible change, if you do manage to get your feet on a 3-3 line of Dunsparce, don't be afraid to swap out the Zoroark for them. While I didn't really talk about them in individual decks, Psyduck and Shaman are always good additions to everything. Psyduck prevents Dusknoir and Dusclops from using their abilities, giving you a chance against Dragapult. And Shaman protects your bench single prizers from damage. Then with Chaos Rising in May, we'll have Patrat, who shuts down Munkidori unless they have a Team Rocket's Watchtower in play. Speaking of May, really the only card you need to worry about is Special Red card. It can replace Judge in your deck, though Unfair Stamp should definitely stay. Basically, if your opponent has 3 or fewer prizes left, you force them down to 3 cards in hand. Nearly every deck will play this, so expect to see a lot of it beginning on May 21st. Aside from Patrat and Red card, follow this guide and all of your decks are prepped until at least August 2026. On top of these 8 free decks through March 2027, a free Mega Zygarde EX deck will be given to every player who logs in between March 26th and May 20th. And as I detailed in yesterday's video, if you make it to tier 50 on the Perfect Order Battle Pass, you'll also receive a Decky Dewey EX deck for free. Then on May 21st, the Chaos Rising Battle Pass will begin, replacing Zygarde and Decidueye with 2 new decks. If you have any other questions, ask away in the comments or check out the new player guide linked in the description. And if you want to see these decks in action, subscribe for regular gameplay videos.